Well, the patrons have spoken again, and once again we have a Gen 2 Pokemon. I guess the Gen 2 fever is real, maybe because Gold and Silver just came out on Virtual Console? Coincidence? I don't know. Anyways, this week we've got one of the most versatile Pokemon to ever exist, Smeargle, who can literally learn anything. With its unique sketch move, in fact, the only move it ever actually learns naturally, Smeargle can paint whatever its heart's desires. Well, provided it can see it. As a kid, I was dumb and sketched something useless because I had no idea what the move did, and I was too lazy to level it up for another move. Then, several years later, I happened upon this video by Killer Nacho, and honestly, although Magikarp might have pulled off the sweep, it was the Smeargle that did everything, and that's what opened the doors for me to competitive Pokemon all those years ago. So, with access to every move that isn't chatter, maybe Smeargle will prove the pen really is mightier than the sword, huh? Or the paintbrush tail? Whatever, let's find out. In this video, we'll be covering these competitive Jesus, that is a whole lot. That is the same amount as Tyranitar. You patrons like making me work, huh? Well, hey, maybe next video will be something less useful. Alright, let's just get into it. Let me paint you a picture. A small dog thing throwing out Aeroblasts and Sacred Fires like no one's business. With access to every move in the game, it makes sense that Smeargle would just spam the best moves in the game, right? Forget Bolt Beam, now we've got Sacred Bolt Blast Beam, yeah! Well, not exactly. With the undisputed best move pool in the game, Smeargle had to take a hit somewhere, and of course, that hit would be in its stats. Look at these things, they're pathetic. Even base 75 speed is pretty mediocre. So yeah, no ultra coverage set coming off of a base 20 attacking stat. God, that's almost as bad as Shuckle. What Smeargle did have was utility, and a whole lot of it. The most common Smeargle set was a Baton Pass set, which made use of what might actually be the best move in the game, Spore. With a guaranteed snoring opponent, provided Smeargle can outspeed it that is, our little Matisse is free to boost up with Belly Drum, Agility, or Swords Dance, which ain't a pretty picture for the opponent once passed to a sweeper. Aside from the trio of Spore, Boosting Move, and Baton Pass, Smeargle had a good chunk of options. Encore to lock in the opponent into an undesirable move, Super Fang so it could at least take a chunk out of them, or Recover to give a little safety to the strategy. Smeargle also had a few other sets, well, I mean, of course it did. It has every move in the game. It made a pretty good spike setter paired with Miracle and Destiny Bond to make a sort of suicide cheese lead, and it had one specific trapping set utilizing Spiderweb and Disable to allow a counter to switch in and set up. Overall though, Smeargle's poor stats dragged it down. Though despite this, it was a solid A- tier in Nintendo Cup, but later in the Smogon meta it found itself in borderline. It was just so frail, and it's also completely useless if it's paralyzed. Not to mention with the prevalence of Rest Talk sets in Gen 2, Spore wasn't always a good thing. Now I do want to acknowledge that despite those limited sets, your imagination is a limit for your Smeargle set. Don't let the rules bind you, touch the sky, and all that good shit. In honor of that, during this video we'll be highlighting the long history of creative expression and experimentation that Smeargle allows. This is Art History 101 with our writer Zane.
Hello, I'm Zane Bhansali, and I'm your teacher for Art History 101. In our first class, we'll be looking at some truly remarkable ancient work. Now, Baton Pass sets had already become the norm at this point, but Pojo user Zyron Tarok came up with a new and unexpected innovation on an already established precedent. His flash of genius posited using Ancient Power as a potential mega boost that could then be Baton Passed to another Pokemon to boost all of their stats. By his own admission, Smeargles are most useful for breeding or as catcher Pokemon, but then again, no great art ever resulted from sticking with the mold.
In Gen 3, Smeargle gained the ability Own Tempo, which meant it couldn't be confused. That's great, I guess, but what Smeargle actually gained was a whole bunch of friends, specifically friends with Baton Pass. Generation 3 saw the advent of full Baton Pass teams, of which Smeargle was an especially important part. First, let's go over full Baton Pass teams. These teams had Baton Pass on every single Pokemon, and focus on keeping the boost growing and building an unstoppable ball of stats that could run over teams. This strategy had some pretty specific Pokemon used in most iterations. Ninjask's speed boost let it get everyone else's speed. Vaporeon was the cleric, Scizor frequently had the job of passing Sword Dance, but honestly, it was Smeargle who kept the whole thing sticking together. Literally. Ingrain, a new move in Gen 3, provided the whole team with recovery, but more importantly, it prevented phasing via moves like Roar and Whirlwind. This was essential to keeping the chain unbroken, and Smeargle also had his choice among Spore, Spiderweb, and Substitute for other forms of insurance against would-be disruptors of the chain, serving the unique role of a disruptor and trapper as well. Even though a good number of importance was on Smeargle in the chain, it was by far the most fragile member member of any Baton Pass team, and if Smeargle died, the chain could be easily disrupted from that point forward. But getting him out on the field was essential to the team's success. There were a ton of ways to take out Smeargle, trapping with Dugtrio's Arena Trap and then destroying him, predicting the switch if it didn't have an Acid Armor from Vaporeon, and of course, priority moves all meant trouble for Smeargle. With that said, he was so crucial to facilitating this incredibly powerful strategy that Ingrain and Baton Pass, a combo only Smeargle had access to, was banned in 2011 from Smogon tournaments. But in that one niche though, Smeargle was incredible. Once its main set was banned, Smeargle still had a good amount of options available to it for use and overuse. Spore plus Belly Drum plus Baton Pass was pretty self-explanatory. Boost, Pass, and then Sweep. It was actually quite good with Pokemon Credilli. Not your typical attacking Pokemon, but you guys should be able to figure out why. It was, once again, to prevent phasing. That also meant it was paired well with Exploud, Mr. Mime, Magneton, and Octillery due to their soundproof and suction cups abilities. But if you don't care about that and you just want raw power, Belly Drum passed on to a regular sweeper like Metacham and Machamp provided outrageous results. Past that, Smeargle had two sets utilizing Endeavor, in which it dropped its opponent's HP to zilch once it had suffered likewise and then finished them off with extreme speed. It could also pair Song Trap, which is pretty self-explanatory, and it even had a set where it attempted its own sweep with Belly Drum, which was sometimes effective. Belly Drum Explosion did one-hit KO Skarmory after all. Finally, it could even attempt the set with Transform, which was able to stop sweeps or Scout by virtue of copying the other Pokemon's stat boosts. But even with all that variety, Smeargle struggled against its old counters, and in addition, it had issues against ghost types with its offensive sets. Haze became more prominent this gen thanks to Weezing, so I had to worry about that, and it usually died in close to one hit, and so once more, it found itself in borderline. But hey, at least it's not a starving artist, right? So, Generation 4, entry hazards are a thing, and Smeargle can use them. With a Focus Sash, lead Smeargle was virtually guaranteed to get off at least one of its setup moves before kneeling over. Although Stealth Rock was the genre-defining hazard, and yeah, Smeargle had the option to run that, it actually used Spikes more simply because it was amazing at setting up multiple layers of them. Its other move slots could be dedicated to a variety of tricks to mess with opponents. Counter to take out physical leads, Taunt to screw other leads, Magic Coat to laugh at other Smeargles or Roserage trying to sleep it, Encore to stop setups, you get the point. It can do a lot. Smeargle could also lean into its artistic flair and don a Choice Scarf, which it would then trick onto other unsuspecting leads to cripple them and free reign for its own setup. And the Endeavor sets made a return, made even better now with Focus Sash and the ability to be level 1 as opposed to level 5. Finally, Baton Pass is back and Ingrain is unbanned. If you're smart, you'll realize that being unbanned actually means the set is worse now. Even though Baton Pass itself had even more options, the list of Pokemon that could stop it through phasing or straight up just killing Smeargle, or both, got a lot larger as well. Gen 4 finally saw Smeargle make its big breakthrough, an artist whose work was finally recognized. With proper spin block support, Smeargle was honestly one of the most reliable hazard setters out there, and even then it could always trick you with another set. And so it ended up in overuse. Oh god, if you thought the list of things Smeargle could do ended there, you're wrong. Because it was a VGC threat too. I'm not sure if it was actually a top threat, but it was pretty up there. With Darkrai banned, Smeargle was the only legal user of Dark Void, which is honestly one of the best moves in doubles. Sleep on both Pokemon at once can potentially be a death sentence for the opponent's team. Smeargle also had access to useful doubles moves, like Fake Out, and oddly enough, Endeavor was just as useful as ever. In fact, it was actually much easier to use because it had immediate team support. Before Heart Gold and Soul Silver, VGC also didn't have a flat level rule, meaning level 1 Smeargle could do its work, and what's even more, become extremely fast in Trick Room due to its low speed. Finally, Smeargle even saw some usage with Transform to hilarious results. Double Machamp could mean Hacks Abuse with Dynamic Punch Confusion, and two Laprases healing each other with their surfs was also pretty damn funny. Post 2009 though, Smeargle's fell off a bit. It saw some play, even in the Japanese finals of 2010, but with Ubers now legal, its frail stats made it even harder to keep up. It was still there, but not particularly common. And now for another edition of Art History 101. Take us away, Zane.
Spore was an established presence in the long annals of Smeargle usage. Elegant, unique, effective, it had everything that you could want in a move. But the true renaissance hadn't come yet. We hadn't been awakened to the true potential of Spore. Enter Azuruland user Suclanim, who stunned us all with a revelation. We'd been putting Pokemon to sleep, yes, but what about waking them up? Suclanim's set, utilizing Wake Up Slap, had a simple premise. Use Spore first, since it's fast, then Swords Dance 3 times, then use Dragon Claw / Wake Up Slap. With two 100% accuracy moves at its disposal, this Smeargle was reliable and threatening. As soon as it entered the scene, the set was met with controversy. Fellow Azuruland user Royal proposed that he might add Baton Pass and Force Palm. One thing's clear. A new era of enlightened thinking had begun. And for that, we say thank you.
Gen 5, surprise surprise, Smeargle's a baton passer once more. This time around though, it's not using Belly Drum. Gen 5 brought with it one of the best setup moves in the game, Shell Smash. You better believe Smeargle is using that thing, so now it's smashing and passing. As a pure smash passer, man that sounds like some street pass thing Nintendo would add to Smash Bros or something. Smeargle was outclassed by Gorobus, who could actually put up a fight on its own and heal status in the rain using hydration. However, Smeargle still had Spore, which is still a really good move, so it really just depended what the team wanted. Other than that, Smeargle was pretty much the same. It had the same hazards lead set and a variety of support moves it could bolster its team with. But it's still the same fragile old Smeargle. Something that beat it really hard that we haven't mentioned yet was Lumberry. If something could ignore a turn of Spore, it could just wallop Smeargle. T-Tar was especially good at this because of Sandstream, effectively negating Focus Sash. As time went on, Smeargle ironically became more and more constrained in what it could do, namely to making use of Spore. You'd think more moves would make it better, but since any attacking move is really just a tool to be used against Smeargle, it's actually the other way. Smeargle's one new toy this generation is an ability called Moody, which ended up being banned by Smogon because it had a chance to increase its evasion. Hooray for Smeargle! With more and more Pokemon able to shrug off its sleep, Smeargle fell all the way down to rarely used. What a bad break. Not to mention considering there were Baton Pass nerfs. While Smeargle wasn't available in VGC 2011, it made a, well, not a triumphant return, but a return nonetheless in 2012. The move Dark Void was actually banned, and even though Moody was allowed in VGC, Smeargle didn't make that much use of it. It was honestly quite a bit worse than in Gen 4, but VGC's doubles format just allowed Smeargle to make a lot of use of its many support options. Tailwind, Follow Me, Taunt, Trick Room. Look, you get the picture. Its big flaw is that it wished it could hold on to two items at the same time. Without Mental Herb, Taunt renders Smeargle useless, but without Focus Sash, any attacking move would do the same, by knocking it out. Yikes. Still, it was an unpredictable wildcard that could augment any team. Not as well as before, but still pretty well. And now on to Gen 6. The once famous artist had been reduced to a hack peddling his wares on the sidewalk. Gen 6 Smeargle is, to put it bluntly, pretty pathetic. Spore is nerfed to no longer affect grass types, and Smogon implemented a complex ban on Baton Pass that just nerfed it over and over again. From being only allowed to 3 members, then to 1 member, then to 1 member that couldn't have a speed boosting stat, yeah, you get the idea. And it also had to deal with more entry hazard removers, especially the Foggers. With many more magic bounce Pokemon, Smeargle had a hard time setting up its hazards. It had to deal with more priority users. There are also pranksters that could outclass it utility wise because they always went first. The list goes on and on. Even in its niche of multiple entry hazards, Smeargle was outclassed by, wait for it, Shuckle. Yeah, that thing based on usage stats was actually better than Smeargle. Smeargle ended up down in PU, from Maestro to Meist no. But much like artists who still have a concentrated group of fans devoted to them, Smeargle found its base of fanatic supporters, doubles players. No offense meant to doubles players, it's a joke, it's a joke. With Dark Void legal again, Smeargle could spam sleep to its heart's content, and now had a fun new toy in Spiky Shield that could allow it to actually give back some hurt. Smeargle's role was effectively to subdue the other team so its partners could set up, something it achieved with flying colors by using moves like Fake Out, Taunt, Wide Guard, Follow Me, and of course, Dark Void. Despite all this, Smeargle actually didn't end up placing top 8 in VGC 2014, and then in 2015, it was only on 3% of teams at Worlds. Though I will say over the course of multiple tournaments, it did have a pretty decent amount of usage. But in fact, it was VGC 2016 that let Smeargle shine. Despite being surrounded by very powerful Uber Pokemon, this is where Smeargle did its work best. Turns out that more power on Smeargle's side meant that every bit of momentum it garnered meant even more. It comboed well with Pokemon with great offense, which is almost every Uber in 2016 to be honest. Especially those who wanted a turn to setup like Xerneas. A single turn of protecting its teammate could potentially win the game for Smeargle, and Moody even allowed it to sometimes get lucky with its evasion boost. Infinitely frustrating, but a point that has to be said in its favor. Though despite this, it still had a good amount of counters, of course. Crobat could eat a Fake Out and still attack due to inner focus, and Mega Kangaskhan can absolutely bot Smeargle by faking it out on its own and breaking Sash because it can attack twice. Safeguard, Magic Coat, and Lumberry were all great countermeasures to Dark Void, and Mega Mewtwo Y could outspeed Smeargle and had Insomnia to protect it. But with all of that said, Smeargle was still super valuable. Hell, even if it dies, you're making the opponent focus down a Smeargle, which is valuable time for whatever monster it's paired with. VGC Gen 6 Smeargle was a force to be reckoned with, and honestly was a pretty important Pokemon, especially in VGC 2016. And now for our final edition of Art History 101.
It's been said that as art evolves, it constantly takes into account more relationships. First, that between the artist and their art. Then, that of the viewer. confronting the artistic declaration. And finally, that of the space in which all are situated, imperceptible to most but inarguably important in the context in which all of their relationships are interpreted. For Pokemon, that final revelation came from Pokemon DB user Someone who changed everything. You see this set and your breath catches in your throat. The audacity of it, the sheer iconoclastic gumption to unshackle oneself from the pugilistic pursuit of victory and merely sustain, almost as arresting as the set itself, is someone's cavalier nature, responding to a post from 6 years earlier and simply justifying their creation with the proclamation, "Because I can." Faced with this set, prolonging our engagement unto infinity, we are forced to confront the space around us, the blank, digitally manufactured space in which we conduct these battles. None of this is real. Does it matter? Of course it does. Do not lose hope in the realization of the transient nature of our pursuit of battle. It makes us happy. It is real, and it is true. Magnificent.
Okay, well, thanks, Zane. So how good was Smeargle actually? It was pretty good, honestly, especially in the later half of doubles. Smeargle suffered a bit from some of the stuff it did being so broken it got banned, like in-game Baton Pass, full Baton Pass teams, Moody, etc. But it still held its niche for a fairly long time. While it's been outclassed now by other Baton Passers and Hazard Setters, it's hard to say if it'll stay in the low tiers, as one weird move could potentially make it great again, even despite its mediocre stats. After all, it pretty much gets carried by Dark Void in doubles, though I hear that Dark Void got nerfed to hell in Gen 7, even on its signature Pokemon. But, well, okay, whatever, Game Freak, you do you. Now let's see if it can pick itself up in singles. Thanks for watching, everyone. Jeez, that was a lot. The patrons love to work me, I guess, but they are directly paying me, so, you know, I can't complain. But thank you so much to our patrons, voters, and supporters for voting for this video, and thank you to everybody for supporting me and helping me put out these videos. And of course, if you liked the video, be sure to subscribe to False Swipe Gaming for more weekly Pokemon content. Comment on which Pokemon you want next, although we kind of know which one is coming next, so I guess comment on the next one. Also, shoutouts to my crew as usual, and that's all I got. See you next time, everyone.